visit our sponsor, Point Zero Energy, right now. Solar backup you can count on. Check out their off-grid portable solar generators and complete do-it-yourself solar panel kits. The HomeGrid 5000 HD provides heavy-duty, portable power to back up your entire home in the event of an emergency or blackout. Ideal for running several large appliances at once, such as refrigerators, freezers, high-surge appliances, and cooktops. Hard-hitting with 5,000 continuous watts and 20,000 surge watts of clean, pure sine wave power. For limited time only, get a free EMP back with the purchase of any midsize or heavy-duty portable solar generator. Built for a variety of emergency situations, the HomeGrid 5000 HD is small enough to make it easily portable for quick evacuation, yet can be expandable and tied into an existing solar array and battery bank, giving you complete off-grid power when you need it most. Visit Point Zero Energy today at pointzeroenergy.com. Click the link below right now. Hey everybody. I'm Christopher Greene, and you're tuning in AMTV, Alternative Media Television. Today is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2016, and Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, put out a dire warning within the last 24 to 48 hours, basically laid out terms for a potential, but this was a warning, this was a statement piece, folks, for potential ceasefire in Syria.
Уважаемые друзья, только что состоялся телефонный разговор с президентом Соединенных Штатов Бараком Обамой. Инициатива разговора исходила от российской стороны, но заинтересованность бесспорно была обоюдной. В ходе беседы мы одобрили совместное заявление России и США в качестве сопредседателей Международной группы поддержки Сирии о прекращении боевых действий в этой стране.
If certain specific conditions were met by the U.S. federal government, the West sponsoring, terrorist organizations like ISIS, the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, and Jabhat al-Nusra Front. That's not a conspiracy, folks. That's actual reality. Funded, armed, and helped to foster these radical terrorist elements in the greater Levant to attempt to overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad. The same successful attempt that was made in Libya, indirectly through NATO, in the assassination of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. We saw the same thing in Egypt with their revolution and re-revolution. We saw this with the George W. Bush era invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan that had nothing to do with September 11, 2001 at all, according to our own intelligence in the official mainstream bullshit narrative. So Vladimir Putin put out a stern warning within the last 24 to 48 hours, basically said, hey, if these conditions are met, there'll be a ceasefire, but if they're not, there will be war. Again, I've talked about this incessantly, folks. This isn't going to happen. We're not even waiting for the catalyst anymore. It's already begun. This is the Great War, a war of worlds between the East and the West. It's amazing how all of this ties into not just the direct geopolitical conflicts on the ground in places like Syria, for example, but also how this plays in and ties into the economic web, a currency war, this war on money. I've talked a lot about this, the truth about money, where it comes from, the criminal federal private bank, central bank here in the United States, creates money from thin air, backed by nothing from nothing. Some of you might ask, what's the difference, Christopher, between a single dollar bill and a $100 bill? Imagine this $100 bill in my hand here. The answer to the question is nothing. Not a freaking thing. They're the same. Not worth the paper that it's printed on. Again, it's not backed by anything. The only thing that inherently gives money value is a belief system, if you can believe that. The fact that people believe that a $100 bill over here is worth more than a $1 bill. Again, there's no inherent difference to it. It's just a belief system. But you have to ask yourself the question, what happens when that belief system crashes and burns to the ground? When it expires? When the light goes out? As we've seen in history, recent history before, with the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s, or the collapse of the British pound, arguably instituted by criminal bankster himself and financier George Soros. Recent examples in history. What happens then? What happens to all the people on welfare in food stamps, in unemployment insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. When the dollar, not worth the paper that it's printed on, isn't worth anything, collapses overnight. Let's say, for example, we wake up tomorrow and the US dollar is no longer used to trade oil. So the petrodollar relationship ends overnight. This happens swiftly and abruptly. All of a sudden, instead of the petrodollar being the way that they trade oil in the Russian ruble, or the Chinese yuan, or the renminbi, for example, or maybe a basket of currencies. What happens then to all those people? You know, we don't see it now like we did in the 1930s, people on the streets, soup kitchen lines. Again, my grandparents were a byproduct of this. They had it really tough. My grandfather literally sold oranges on a street corner. He was the head of the household when he was like friggin' 13 years old. We don't see this now because we have all these social programs that were created as a byproduct of the Great Depression. We don't see people on the streets because, thankfully, for the people that need it, not the people that abuse it, we have these programs. You know, Bernie Sanders only has it half right. You know, he's targeted the big, too big to fill banksters. He says there's a problem with that, these criminal enterprises. I agree with him, but he's not putting enough focus on the Federal Reserve. That is the root of all evil. That is the freaking problem in this country and abroad. You know, you look at the central bank, again, creating currency from nothing and then lending, actually arguably paying the too big to fail institutions, now with negative interest rates in places like Europe, to take that same currency and create a giant multiplier effect in our economy. That's what quantitative easing is. Flood supply to the market to do one thing, artificially inflate asset prices to give us a farce of a recovery, even though we're in an economic depression, which will lead to war. Not lead to it, we're already in it. Again, all of this artificial, all of this funny money. We talk about alternatives to this illusion that makes up money, things like digital currency, Bitcoin, which is backed by the integrity of its algorithm. Still created by man, still man-made, but has more integrity. At least it has an algorithm tied to it. The US dollar has nothing tied to it outside of a belief system. This is primarily why the United States is at war. This is why the United States took out Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, because he wanted to get off the petrodollar. It's why there's a war on oil. There's been a collapse in oil prices. We're in the doldrums. It's why we experienced the economic collapse in the first place. And it's why we have quantitative easing into infinity. It's why we have negative interest rates. And Vladimir Putin just put out a dire warning. He basically said, do this or else. You know, people ask me, Christopher, what do we do to prepare? And first off, I have to respond to that. You know, look, I'm not God, okay? I'm a man. I'm not some omniscient force. I don't have all the answers. I believe myself to be an instrument of God, just like you're an instrument of God. You have unique talents, etc. That doesn't come, and I'm not saying that doesn't come from a place of ego or anything like that, but I believe myself to be an instrument of God, as you are an instrument of God, or the energy or this force that makes up the universe or whatever you believe in. You know, I think the primary way that we prepare, this is something that we've been doing, is through intellectualizing what this all means, bringing awareness and understanding to these criminal institutions in the first place. Basically showcase to the viewing public how they're being screwed by these people. This giant Ponzi scheme, which is basically Bernie Madoff on steroids. And these people have been allowed to get away with it, folks. All of these too big to fail institutions that borrow and lend for free and create debt and help to blow giant bubbles bigger than what we saw in 2008 and 2009 that will eventually pop. And then what? What happens then? You see, the Federal Reserve having shot that last bullet, now moving into the negative interest rate area, as we're seeing in Europe, doesn't really have a lot of room to run. It's backed into a corner. So it's basically just buying time until the inevitable, until that shift, which is occurring now. Vladimir Putin is warning about it. And it's not even a direct front to the United States. You know, it could just be Russia and China. They just don't want to do business and don't want to have trade deals with a country that's freaking insolvent. You know, we saw this with the collapse of Rome. Their imperialism, all the wars they were fighting, etc., just bankrupted the entire society and civilization until it ended. And then it, entered a dark age. This is where we are in America today. The question you need to ask is, how long can it last? So, we intellectualize, We prepare there, we educate others, we share the truth, we share this vision, this understanding of what we know the world to be today. We can take physical preparations with food storage and water supply and having a good bug out location and self-defense. All those things are excellent, amazing things. I've encouraged those things over the 5+ years that I've done this. You can take steps to protect your financial assets. I've always humbly believed you take 5 to 10% of your total investment portfolio, if you're lucky enough to have an investment portfolio, and you buy precious metals as a hedge and a diversification to the risks that we talk about on a daily basis. But I'm not God. If a nuke goes off tomorrow and there's bloodshed in Europe, God forbid, I hope there's not, I pray there's not, or we see a suitcase bomb go here off in the United States, we can't necessarily control that. We're trying to prevent it. We're trying to warn people of the terrorists, is really what they are in Washington, D.C. today. The terrorists that make up the bankster elites on Wall Street today in New York City. These monolithic, too big to fail, multi-trillion-dollar institutions that continue to rape you and your children and your children's children. This doesn't end well. This kick the can down the road strategy doesn't end well. These endless wars and bloodshed in the Middle East does not end well. It ends in tragedy for all of us. I'd like to hear what you think. Put your comment, question, suggestion in the box below. Get this video out everywhere. Make it viral. Hard-hitting and in your face. I'm Christopher Greene, and you've been tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television.